No. Sarah's taking notes. The trick is always be on the end. Because this way you don't have to spin your head both ways. You can just always look like you care about what the other person's saying.
I'm gonna do that anyway.
By just looking to the left. Okay, all right, let's, first of all, thank you guys for joining us. We're excited today. As I mentioned, this was a conversation that came together between me and Mark randomly over Christmas. Well, I guess we kind of been talking about it for a while, but we decided that we put a stake in the ground and begin to build a partnership. So this is the first of many conversations that you'll see us have alongside co-programming some of the Brand Innovator stages, the next one being Super Bowl, which everybody will get much greater heads up, but you just got now. So there you go. Consider yourself warned. Today, you know, what we really wanted to start the year off with from a GroupBlack perspective was talk about kind of, I think, the thing that has been our superpower and the piece that every time we look at are we being successful or not, it's about doubling down on what our initial mission was. And, you know, I've told the story before, but this was really born of looking at the Black-owned media ecosystem and realizing that at the end of the day, it was relatively small, but even bigger is that when we think, you want me, I can talk louder if you want me to. Okay. He's like, no, do not talk louder. That's the last thing. We keep hitting the highs. It really, what became clear was that there wasn't a mechanism. So historically, there hasn't been a lot of available capital or funding, and there wasn't a mechanism that was going to accelerate that effort for investment and growth at the same pace at which people were committing to spend in the market. And so we said, well, how do we create a model to facilitate that? And at the core of that was really supporting those that have been on this journey as part of the collective with us. And it's interesting because even over the holidays, having a chance to kind of think about where we have come, I realize there's so much more that we need to do in support of the collective, but also that at the end of the day, it continues and will be our superpower moving forward. And I think the benefits of community, we call it collective, but I think generally the benefits of community are seen when people come together to do something that's far greater than the sum of themselves. And I use the example of the collective bargaining agreement, which in 1999, the NBA signed the collective bargaining agreement. 10 years before that, the average salary was $300,000. 10 years later, after that agreement, it was $2 million. Today, it's a little under $10 million. So the ability to come together and help scale an overall effort. So what we wanted to do was start the year off with talking to the collective as continually providing, you know, a place for us to hear the voice of the folks that are building, you know, the media businesses of this generation, but also to set the stage for the fact that we believe that last year and maybe a couple of years before that was the first part of the realization that, hey, there's a opportunity and to invest in this community, but that opportunity, I think, has been talked about from one side of the coin, which has been the social opportunity. And yes, of course, there's a great social opportunity, and we should all wake up and strive to do good in our life. But at the end of the day, as much as we would love businesses to operate on, you know, on flowers and rainbows, they also unfortunately have to deliver bottom line. And the reality of this is that more than anything, more than just the right thing to do, the only place that we see true growth being sourced, you know, within the next 5 years is in the communities that are underinvested, and that's the only place that you find growth are those that you haven't reached. And this remains, and we believe will be for a long time, one of the areas where you can find growth. And I think we've seen that time and time again, whether it's in Contos or whether it's Black Panther. It's like, oh my God, we made a superhero movie with black people in it. And by the way, also people who weren't black like to watch superheroes too that happen to be black. It worked. It's like, okay, thanks. I could have told you that going into, you didn't need to. And here we are. But the point is that we've moved into an inclusion age where the ability to provide a truly inclusive message that is not just the race, the gender, the sex of the person that delivers it has to tie directly to the person that receives it, but that, diverse voices at scale in general market will drive general market and actually unlock areas of the market that you haven't been able to unlock today. And so this year moving forward is really a message around growth, and how these organizations that sit on the stage in front of us are helping to drive growth. But before we go into that, I'm going to let each of you explain who you are and what you do. So why don't we start with Sarah? Ladies first.
All right, thanks. Ladies first, the lady at the end. So I'm a CEO of Crater. Crater we have just launched, and Crater is a first of its kind creator network that is accelerating next wave culture. And ultimately, to Bonin's point, there are a lot of underinvested groups, and what we know about creators. Creators are the new startups. They are, in many cases, bigger than most media companies. They carry influence. They create ideas all day long. They push and drive culture forward. But there's been a lot of underinvestment, and actually, what we know is that actually investing in creators and investing in this growth of culture is where the future of media will be. And so, our role at Crater is to do. We're kind of essentially our kind of mission is to drive more value for creators than ever before. And value for creators is lots of different things, right? So it could be money, it could be relationships, it could be opportunities, and so on. But we're starting with two things. We're starting with, to Bonin's point, community. Creating essentially kind of almost like a chief for creators. So what Chief has done for executive women, creating an environment where creators can come together, create peer experiences, mentorship, and education. And we're inviting partners and brands to participate in that process. So financial partners that can teach creators how to help build businesses, whether that's or creative partners that can help them get their content created and pushed. And two, helping to accelerate their next wave ideas. So our community is consistent in one thing. They all have a big idea. They all have something that they want to go and build and create next. And that idea, that moment, we're calling that locked in culture. Those are things that they can't make on their own. They can't push it out. They don't have the financing. They don't have the resources. They're missing pieces of the puzzle in order to be able to push that culture out into the world. But it's already culture that exists and has been born of a community and a space. And so we're enabling brands to essentially come in and participate with that next wave culture, to be on the coattails of those rocket ships as they take off. So that's ultimately what Crater is all about. We are fresh out. We're going hard and fast into this year with our community and really driving value for them in every single way. And
I'm just going to say one thing. I also think that one of the things that I think makes the concept of Crater unique is that they provide the opportunity for brands not just to partner with creators, but more importantly for creators to bring passion projects to life. And, I think I just read, I love a good ad week, but I think they might have stole from us. But they had their what's in and what's out. Yes. And, they said what's out is brands telling creators what to create. What's in is supporting creators' passion projects, right? So trusting creators to reach their followers. I mean, right. I think they kind of ripped that out from us. But anyway, ad week, you heard that from us here first. Anyway, Gary, go ahead.
Thanks, Bonin. My name is Gary Coichy. I am the founder and CEO of Pod Digital Media. Pod Digital Media, we are the first and the largest multicultural podcast network in the country. We work with over 400 podcasters, primarily African Americans and Hispanics, and we connect and we bridge the gap between their shows and blue chip advertisers. We started the company in 2018 with 5 podcasters. Now we work with over 400 podcasters. We started with 0 advertisers, and now we work with well over 200 advertisers. From multi-year deals with McDonald's, from the P&Gs, Ford, Lexus, Toyota, Walmart, you name it, we work with every advertiser that's around. Our overall objective is certainly to place black podcasters, Hispanic podcasters, and gamers, and now we're stepping into the Asian market too, as they're creating content, to ensuring that we can help them monetize their shows.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Johnson, the founder and CEO of Cxmmunity Media. At Community Media, our mission is around future-proofing diversity in the esports and video game landscape by building the largest collection of gaming-based and educational content through a multicultural point of view. Currently, to date, within our media organization, we have 2 media assets. First, we launched the first ever esports league for historically black colleges and universities in North America. So we're very fortunate. We're now going into our 3rd season. Our distribution partners for this is Amazon Media and Twitch. So we're working currently with brands like Verizon, Discover, Nike, and Hot Pockets. And in our first 2 seasons, we reached over 30 million live viewers through our Twitch channel. The second media asset that we just created is called the Kickback, which is an in-person and digital experience that we hosted, the first one in Atlanta, Georgia. And the Kickback is designed to be the celebration of gaming. So from an analogy standpoint, I like to say, similar to Bonin's NBA expression, is that the HBCU Esports League is the NBA traditional season, and the Kickback is the All-Star weekend, where the season is very formal, is very structured in its schedule. The Kickback is the celebration of gaming, music, culture, fashion. So we just did a really cool experience in Atlanta. We had Pusha T headline one of our concerts, G Herbo, some other notable brands, and Riot Games and Amazon Games actually helped us bring this property to life. So again, we're everything gaming, building opportunities for underrepresented gamers, content creators. I'm just excited to be here and share a little bit more about how we're positioning ourselves as a black media agency in this space.
Right, and every time I have a chance to sit with Ryan, I'm always impressed. But it doesn't matter what I say. But having sat with your media partners, I mean, the growth that they see and the opportunity with you is tremendous. And I think, what he's not saying is he can use the NBA example. You're welcome. But I think the bigger example is the NCAA. So he's literally created the NCAA of, and by the way, when we sat down, he said, tremendous success, but he also bounded his success by focusing just on HBCUs, and there's a whole other world out there, which, as he begins to build out. But to be able to tap into something that is literally the NCAA of gaming is a huge opportunity in the continued growth. So we're excited. I just wanted to come back to Gary, too, because Gary did send a note over the holidays saying that he was excited and happy for kind of the journey we've been on, but also just the amount of audio that you've been able to amass in such a short time, I think, speaks to the hunger for this audience and for those voices, and so we're excited. I'm going to hand it over to you, Lynnwood, and then we'll go into some real questions. And no more praise. The hard stuff.
I'll go quick. Lynnwood, Bibbens, CEO
that, by the way.
And founder of ReachTV. We're a live streaming television network based in the travel space. Launched in 2016. Founded in 16. Launched in 17 in 3 airports. Now we're in 90 airports, U.S. and Canada. Just launched in Africa.
UK too, right?
UK. We're expanding tremendously across Europe. We stream live in 480,000 hotel rooms. Another 600 as a kind of linear broadcast. Pretty happy. Last year we acquired CNN Airport, beginning of last year, and then we launched our partnership with the NFL. We're the only network that has every NFL game, Thursday night, Sunday 1, Sunday 4, Sunday night, Monday night, playoff, Super Bowl. And just before I got here, one of our marketing head just sent me a text. Last year we had a little over 540 million viewers. So, it was a great year for our network, working with GroupBlack and working with a bunch of people on the stage. Just a quick note, I literally work with everybody else here and their content partners. So part of the collective that's been exciting for me is picking up directors, producers, and people to create content. We have over 40 original productions content in production right now, and we're using a lot of people, diverse people, to get paying gigs, not, hey, do this and maybe come over. Actually getting them in a budget, showing them how to create a budget, paying them, and then showing them a template and getting results. And those shows are the ones that are being picked up by brands and by other people. So it's been a great year for us and a great use of the collective.
Can you contextualize what 680,000 rooms? So how many rooms are in Miami? Do you know? Not yours, but I mean just hotel rooms in general.
So I'll go New York. I'll give you a couple. New York is 43,000. LA's 38,000. I think Miami's around 16,000. DC's like about 22,000. A lot of these rooms moved away because of COVID and certain things didn't open up.
But I mean, just for context, you probably operate enough hotel rooms to fill the top 25 cities in the U.S., if not more.
Yeah, and a lot of those that we're in W's, we're in Four Seasons, we're in a bunch of different of them. We used a company that already had the platform. I tried to buy a couple years back, but I didn't win the buy, but I was able to negotiate a distribution deal with them. So it just gave me an opportunity to own that space and really understand as we go forward what the data is and what people are doing and what their actions are.
Right, and I'm just thinking about, you know, just to help people contextualize scale of you know, opportunity. Not to mention, I mean, airports. I mean, like literally. So you want to hear? So the NBC team was traveling. I don't know exactly where they were traveling to, but maybe I shouldn't have said who it was. A team from a network were traveling, and Lynnwood changed. You changed it so that literally.
To the team.
Welcome to the team at the gate that they were boarding. I was like, that's pretty good. But okay, I was going to start with you, but now I'm not going to Ryan. So before we jump into kind of collective and those pieces, I really just want to know, as you guys have, as we're moving into the year, everybody wants to know predictions, but what do you see kind of ahead for this year? And then I guess the other question to that is, what were your biggest challenges last year, and how do you think those will pan out, or you can kind of address those this year?
So to speak on last year and then transition into this year, the biggest challenges for us is, I mean, we're like any other startup. We are a very nimble and very small team. So for us, really working prior to meeting folks like GroupBlack and working with groups like Amazon Media was really getting the validation of getting certain brands to buy into our platforms and the things that we were creating within the esports and video game landscape. But one of the benefits of, I would say, over the last few years is that gaming has risen to the top of everyone's priority list in some capacity. So for us, we were very uniquely positioned, especially being HBCU alumni, me and my co-founder. Once we started this esports league, it really took off in the sense that I guess let me take one further step back. I apologize. The statistic that got our company started is when we found out that nearly 83% of African American youth play video games on a weekly basis, but the video game workforce itself only represents 4% of African Americans. So in the very beginning, it was like, how can we create a platform and start telling stories that first, before we create content, that educates and exposes students to careers in a space that they're so passionate about. So our first step was creating this gaming league, and literally we started with about 6 schools. As I mentioned, I attended Oakwood University. My business partner went to North Carolina Central. I lie to you not, the first matchup was a Call of Duty matchup between my school and his school, and within about 6 weeks, we went from 6 schools to 10 to 15 to 20, and we now have 30 universities that compete in our 22-week-long season. So what I'm really looking forward to this year is actually we're in the middle of our 3rd season that starts, the second half of our 3rd season starts on January 31st. So for all of you that are potentially interested, check us out on Twitch every Tuesday night. We're right on the front page at 7 o'clock. But what I'm really looking forward to this year is that we're doing the first sets of in-person events. So with that being said, as I just mentioned, we just did a very large in-person event in Atlanta in October. We're planning to do our second version of the Kickback on March 30th or 31st in Houston, Texas, during the weekend of the Final Four, and then we'll also be creating that same experience at Cannes Lions in France this summer as well. Second to that, our esports league, as you can imagine, unlike traditional sports, the teams are not traveling school by school and playing on site. Everyone participates in a virtual manner. So this is the first semester starting this spring that will actually have in-person events in Atlanta, Georgia, with audiences, the teams playing in one mutual location, because now what we're really, really big on is socializing what's happening, because we essentially created a digital video game league that entirely exists on the internet. And so when we come to panels like this or host various events, the explanation is sometimes null and void until people can actually see the content or experience it in person. So that's actually what I'm really looking forward to. Not to get super ahead of myself, just yesterday we were approved for a South by Southwest panel on gaming. So for us, it's like taking these very small incremental steps as we build out our business, but then also as our content continues to scale, our productions are getting more advanced, and working with better partners and brands. That's really what I'm looking forward to as we kind of transition into 2023.
And then expanding in-person experiences so that people can feel in touch. You know, it's interesting because in my previous life, when we had purchased Versus, that was the hardest thing, was to get people to understand how to touch kind of the scale. But the other piece, I think, you know, people, when we spend time talking to brands, they struggle with, like, Okay, but people stand around and watch other people play video games, right? And the funny thing is so what I got for Christmas was an N64 with GoldenEye, and it made me think of you because all I did for most of my college and like early or late high school was, well, we did other stuff, but then play video game while we were playing video games. Anyway, played video games and literally sat around and watched waiting for our turn to go. But it's no different than watching a sport. You're literally watching and learning at the same time, and people forget that, that component piece. And just I think about my level of attention that focused on that, and that attention span. So I guess my point there is that there's one piece so that people can touch it in the live world, which we'd love to continue to help with. And I also just think that helping people understand and conceptualize the attention span, because it's not really just passive watching. Like people are literally like, okay, I'm trying to learn how do I hide in that corner and shoot the grenade launcher and bounce it off the wall. Like and so they're actually paying attention. Sorry, did you?
No, I was just going to say the last piece I was going to say to your point, within gaming, I think it's very important to distinguish esports from gaming. So esports very traditionally is professional and amateur, very strategic competitions when most people fall into casual gaming. So most of your viewers in this space are technical viewers. They're watching to get better. They're watching to figure out how they can make their own gaming experience when they're not consuming this content, become better players and more effective in that space as well.
Right. It's like, all the people who watch paddle. No. I'm going to go to Sarah. So I can't ask you about last year. So I'm going to ask you about what are the challenges that you see? Well, first of all, prediction for this year moving forward. Maybe it's around creators, but challenges that you see potentially, especially as we move into a different market pressure, meaning recession.
So I actually think I'll start with kind of what I'm looking forward to. I do think that there's a movement towards really understanding that creator-led is actually going to be a very big play for brands going into next year. I think there's a recognition that they're the people that know their audience the best. They understand how to create and build content. So I think that is absolutely going to be a trend that's already beginning, and I think we're going to see that rise. In terms of challenges from recession or kind of dip, I think one of the big things that we're going to see is actually kind of a rise in creators. We've seen the stats going from like 50 million to 400 million. And the pandemic was an immense, creator of creators in many ways, right? Like lots of people began experimenting and getting into that space. So I think we're going to see a lot of people entering the space as a creator. There's a lot of people now that are, the way I sort of been thinking about it is that there's kind of sort of three sort of entry points as a creator. One is sort of the accidental creator, right? So even like Carby is a perfect example of that. Lost his job, started mucking about on TikTok, and all of a sudden, like, boom, took off. And now is able to kind of build that and build a business. You've got people who I would consider are more of the talent marketer type of creator. So Grace Africa is someone who's in our network. She's a comedian, and we were doing a panel at a GroupBlack event and had her come along, and she texted me before I sort of sent her like, this is how I'm planning on introducing you. She said social media star, Grace Africa, blah blah blah. And she sent me a message back saying, actually, can you take it out, social media star? I don't want to be known as that. Like, I'm a comedian, right? So she's using social media and building and being a creator and being in that space to market her talent to get to where she wants to get to eventually, right? And then there's like the solopreneur, right? The person who's choosing this lifestyle. Like, hey, I want to be my own business. I want to be on my own schedule. I want to do as much or as little as I want. I think I can make some money through some of these different vehicles. And so I think we're going to see, again, as the recession continues and job markets are shifting, we're going to see those side hustles become full-time hustles for more and more people. And their entry points and ambitions are going to look different. So I think that's going to be a big trend that we're going to see in reaction to the economic environment.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought, I guess, recession is parallel to kind of
birth of startups.
Right,
I mean,
right, right,
that's
right,
actually
right,
historically true, right?
right,
Like,
right.
best businesses and startups actually often begin in downtimes.
Right.
And so, I think we're gonna see that in the kind of creator entrepreneur landscape unfold quite rapidly, I think.
So if I get fired, then I can potentially be copied.
You
Is
could
that what-
100%
Okay,
be copied.
I'll work on getting fired. So, what would you? You said it's not hard. No, Gary. So I'm gonna ask a prediction for the year moving forward, but I'm gonna ask a different question because as you go down the line, kind of in terms of the more mature in the media landscape, audio is only second maybe to TV is probably one of the more mature businesses. So let me ask you this because I know as we talk about what the landscape looks like, one, give your prediction, and two, we've heard in some instances where organizations are nervous that black-owned media doesn't perform like white-owned media. How do you answer that? What are your thoughts to it?
So that's actually not true. They, in fact, do say that, right? But actually not true. The reason, what's happening is that they're comparing impressions versus impact. So if you go, for example, let's stick to audio. If you go to iHeart, and iHeart will be able to tout and say, look, we can deliver on a weekly basis 30 to 40 million listeners. And then you come to a company like ours, and we're saying on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, we can potentially give you 8 to 9 million. But those numbers are not necessarily comparable simply because the impact that we have, the influence that we have from culturally relevant content that we're creating actually supersedes the 40 million that they're delivering on. Right, and for us, for audio, which is specifically podcasting, the measurement piece is not mature yet. So it's not necessarily a black thing. It's the entire medium that's still trying to figure it out. Do we stick to programmatic? Do we go to embedded content? Are we doing host read ads? What's working best? So the medium itself is still finding it's still growing. But overall, as far as the impact, when you have culturally relevant content being created by culturally relevant influencers and they actually have the audience that's listening to them, that's bound to deliver results. So that's a no-brainer. So that's in fact not true. But I think overall the issue that we have in podcasting is just the fact that we're all still trying to figure it out.
And I wasn't specifically saying it to podcasting. I was just saying it was a conversation even I had on the stage today with Bob Lord from IBM. And from my standpoint, I think you brought it up, which is we haven't challenged our organizations to truly understand the measurement by which we're applying to one of the pieces I share is like you look at hip hop. So hip hop is the largest generating genre, economic generating genre in history. That wasn't done by 13% of the population. I would love to say it was. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult, or we haven't pressed ourselves to figure out how to measure those things. I'm going to come to you now. Prediction for the year, but also, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I saw last year, and it's interesting, having not been specifically in black media, throughout my career, and having now been at the spear of it, the tip of it. I've seen the industry. I've seen interesting things that I'm like, oh my God, this which is it's frightening, but at the same time, things that need to be moved forward. But with your scenario, you're in an interesting situation because, prediction for the future, and when you hear black owned, it feels like what comes right after that is black targeted. And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll go with the prediction first. Prediction for me, for our company, is we've been building for the last 2 years. We've seen a trend coming, which is about identity, advertising, retargeting, data. So we've been building for the last 2 years APIs, core APIs for us, and really we feel like we're going to have more of a 360 approach on how we do our advertising moving forward, and that's going to give us a competitive advantage against other people that are trying to compete with us. We have over 300 million device IDs are from our own network itself. Second, to answer your question, and finish my projection. My other part of my projection is that travel is the one thing that seems to be resistant to recession, what have you. So when the fourth
Not
quarter,
to COVID.
it doesn't matter that either. So when fourth quarter was going and people and agencies are immediately just say cut, I go, let me get this straight. Like I'm 5 years old. You want to cut during the busiest time of people traveling. Make sure that I understand that. And so once you simplify that, we didn't get the cuts that other people were getting. So we were blessed in that sense. The second part of your question or your statement was, I'll give you a perfect example. There's brands that come to me and all of a sudden they see it's me, and all of a sudden I get moved to the agency that's the black targeted agency. I don't know if anybody's been to an airport. That's not a black targeted area. So I mean, the company that I bought, CNN, was here for 30 years. Just keep treating me the same exact way. And I think that's kind of what the problem is. Once they see me, they also change their tone. The airport's the airport, and it's a mixture of everybody. And what the opportunity is those people spend money. That's what they should be focused on. This year we did 70 case studies in an effort to help show the attribution and prove that our network works and it has the effect. So that's kind of how we had to. We're looking at all things to combat those things.
Right. No. I just find it interesting because in an attempt, I think, just from a real perspective, in an attempt for the industry to try to reset, they say, okay, we're creating, and I watched the world go from having multicultural groups and agencies to general market. And I watched all the multicultural groups and the multicultural agencies get wiped out. And now we're kind of shifting the pendulum back and trying to reset, but at the same time we're taking a very blunt instrument. And so when you look at a lot of organizations, like at the end of the day, audio game, like these are not, and that's why we're very focused on, just because we're black owned doesn't mean we're black targeted. And by the way, if CBS can own BET, we're going to own NBC, and that's the word. But even more than that is that the influence is far greater. And so
Can I say something, so do you?
Are you going to stop me from talking?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I do want to say one thing, because I think we rush over it a little bit, and sometimes you have to be blunt. I've seen it where people feel like they're over this, and that's the part that I think drives me a little bit nuts. I see the rolled eyes in the middle of a presentation. I see the kind of attitude where it's presented this way. I'm a little bit pissed about it, and part of me just says, it's what we're built for, is we understand it. But if you're sitting on the other side, you have to make sure that you understand that this is the second year that they had Black Media Upfronts? It's 2 years. That's it. That's all it is. I think that's kind of where we got to push back on this, because it's just, you're balancing something. And if you look at the end of the day, every single one of the networks here, everybody here can prove attribution, and that if you look at the culture of everything that is black culture, you look at this culture and what drives pop culture, that's what you're buying into. So buy in early at the creative side and then follow it through. And that's where you can actually drive and create your attribution. I just get a little frustrated watching it. And I'm dealing with just, who we deal with, and seeing it I've seen it probably 30, 40 times this year already.
Well, I mean, if we're going to open up to that conversation, I'll go back to question. Unless somebody wants to jump in on that, or because let me say one thing, and then I'm going to come. So, I've been on in this for a little bit of time, and having seen this side, here's how I look at it. The reality is that when I look at this, I look at growth, and that's where I come from. That's where I spent my entire life. And even when I was battling for mobile, it was the same exact thing. 10 years it took for the industry to even, but when you begin to unlock that, look at what happened. And those that were early, and so I think that we sit in that scenario. But I think that's the conversation, which is, where else are you going to source growth? This is literally the only place. But what I did want to ask, just Gary, just kind of going back to that piece, which is, how are you kind of lined up? So if it's impressions, okay, fine, you don't have the same number of impressions, but how do you showcase kind of the same value creation as any of the other audio? Because there's smaller audio players,
right,
than just the larger ones.
For sure. I think for us is the type of talent that we're leveraging, right? For example, we'll have a macro influencer such as a Jalen Rose, right? Jalen Rose is former basketball player, currently now on ABC and ESPN, but his podcast, he definitely hasn't. He's not reaching the same numbers that he's seeing on ESPN, because clearly ESPN is a bigger machine than him being independent. But the quality of audience that he has, they're tuning in on a weekly basis because they see him as a trusted source. They believe him because they know he knows the game of basketball. They see that he's fashionable. He gets the best haircuts. He wears the best suits. So when he's speaking on those things, you believe him because you aspire to be Jalen Rose, right? So therefore, I think for us, how we're gauging it is we're saying we're able to really connect you with key influencers that can deliver culturally relevant content, not just go ahead and creating any cookie cutter approach and hope that it works at 30 seconds ad. No, Jalen Rose is able to tell a story. By him telling a story, it resonates with the audience that he caters to, and that's where you get the impact, and that's how you're able to see growth, because then now other people are saying, oh, this is what Jalen Rose said, I'm going to do what Jalen Rose said, and now the trend carries on.
I got it. Sorry, Ryan, did you want to?
I do want to say one thing, though, in regards to what Lynnwood was referencing to in terms of Black owned and Black targeted, because I also equally get frustrated, is that for so long, the Black-owned media, we were not getting the dollars that are being allocated towards us, right? So then now you have these companies that are being built saying they can reach Black folks, however, they're not Black-owned, just to be able to take a piece of that pie that we haven't had for years. So on our own, I mean, what's our saving grace is the minority certification, the ability to prove that we are in fact 51% owned. That's been our saving grace. But overall, I think it's the equity piece that we're fighting for. It's still not even playing field yet. So,
No, the thing that pissed me off was large organizations going, oh, we got a solution. I'm like, we can't get 2%? 2%. That's it. We can't get 2%? Like, not even that. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
But Gary, I mean, I think for you certainly, like the people listening to his podcast, that it's not entirely a Black audience, right? Like that's the point. Like the culture, the talent, and actually the people that are driving and leading culture are tend to be actually over skew versus the demographic to be Black and brown people, and those are the folks that actually have huge wide appeal, mass audiences. You know, Crater for sure is we're a diverse company. We are Black founded and owned, and we are women led, right? And we are diverse all the way top to bottom. And
You don't have a shot, Sarah.
I don't have a shot. But we have, you know, but at the same time, like that's the point. Like we want to create an environment where like access is equal, and we have that environment, and audiences are everybody. Everybody consumes culture. Everybody consumes gaming. Everybody's consuming at the airport. Like these aren't narrow multicultural only audiences, and like that's just like it's something that just has to be super, super clear that ownership and audience are just not the same thing.
Yeah, and as I started to think about what my hopes and dreams would be for the next year, it's that we tackle that conversation around Black owned doesn't mean Black targeted, and that we really begin to understand that diverse voices drive general market. Two, that there's no other place to truly source growth. And three, which is the most important, which is the thing that I tackled for most of my career, which is anything that's new needs to be looked at and measured differently. But it's the belief system. So the organization has to have, from the leadership down, the belief that this is where I'm going to win, and I'm going to force the organization to understand how to win there. Again, I fought this battle with mobile. They were like, and all of a sudden, you know, we shifted 32%. We had $2 billion top line, $300 million bottom line, but we had to change our measurement partners. We had to change our creative partners. Like, we had to have the will to do it. But we unlocked growth that we would not find anywhere else. Ryan, so how many gamers do you guys have in totality? And then on the other side, how many gamers is a total addressable market?
Cool. I'll start in reverse. So total addressable market.
Every time I ask him a question, he's like, I'll answer the second part
the
first.
data makes sense, just told the other way. So worldwide, there's said to be about 3 billion gamers, most of them being mobile and PC, console falling very last in that piece. From an audience for esports, at the end of 2022, it was projected that there will be 400 million esports enthusiasts throughout the world. So just to make the difference around the audience for us who participates in our league is significantly different than the audience that's consuming the content that's being created from the gameplay. So within our league, we have 30 universities. Within those 30 universities, there's roughly 145 students that are representing their individual schools and going in these week-to-week competitions. So from a weekly basis, from a Twitch standpoint, we reach about 550,000 live viewers over our 3-hour broadcast on a weekly basis. And even for some of our one-off events, like the event that we just did in October, that was a one-day, 6-hour event, and we did 1.7 live unique viewers throughout that broadcast. So the ability, to Gary's point, is that we have influential talent, influential voices, and we bring on familiar talent talent like a T-Pain or someone along those lines to really help shape the story, but then also to widen the reach and the interest. Very transparently, not a lot of people, like we talked about earlier, are super interested in watching people play competitive esports. But for us, we look at gaming as a culture and lifestyle mechanism. Rappers game, professional athletes game, entertainers game. So how do we bring those voices, those stories into the content and programs that we're creating? But the underlying factor is the fact that these students are actually competing in the same way that they will play basketball, football, or track and field for their respective schools. So within our league, in the last year alone, we've provided over $1.2 million worth of scholarships for students. So these students are actually earning money, not only for winning competitions, but for actually participating on the team. So it's creating not only a social economic vehicle, but is actually encouraging students, because like various traditional sports, we have codes of conduct. So if you want to play on your esports team at your university, you still have to maintain a 3.0 GPA. So there are now students who are not traditional athletes who are even trying to excel better academically so they can still be a part of a new and growing organization at their university. The last piece where we make this whole thing come about is the social impact arm. So all of the brand partners that are a part of our programs or sponsor, or even some of the advertisers, the students then throughout the summer have the chance to work in internships at these various corporations. So last summer alone, of our 130 gamers, we got 25 students placed in paid 10-week internships at our various corporate partners and game publishers. So that way they're, again, getting that direct connectivity to an industry that they're so passionate about. So for us, it's like a 360 approach from viewership, but the social impact piece is really where we're started, and that's really the core ethos. We have literally invented, I like to think like the value of basketball in the Black community, you cannot put a number on it, right? From the guys that play professional, from the workouts, the workout skills trainers, to the summer camps, to content, that's the same type of ecosystem that we've established in our building in the space of gaming for underrepresented people.
But now you're also impacting the diversification at these companies as well, too, right?
100%. So again, that's like our sticking factors. Like, yes, through our partnerships and our content, we can get you reach and engagement, but ultimately we can help raise those ESG scores because we'll actively put those same students in internships. You'll pay them, and then there'll be a whole lifestyle cycle of a marketing and media campaign versus just like the traditional flight period.
Right. All right, I'm gonna go. I was gonna say I'm gonna go to the audience, but go ahead.
I got a question?
Yeah, please.
I got a question and a comment I'm confused on. So, Gary, to me, it doesn't matter. You have the Black audience, your Black-owned media, but at the end of the day, your CPM should be 4x commodity-based media because of the contextual relationship between, your audience and your content as opposed to an iHeart factor. So I'll just make that comment. Where I get confused, and Lynnwood and I have spoken many times, and Lynnwood knows my team launched the airport network when I was at Turner Broadcasting, and was never concerned. No one ever. It was in an airport, right? So you have Black ownership of a media company that's in a public space that has business travelers, leisure travelers, the whole mix of America, right? Which is what everybody wants. Why in the world would they send you to a Black the diversity part of the agency?
I'll answer the question without.
I never had to go.
Yeah, I'll answer the question without telling you the company name, but I will tell you that it a good friend of mine runs the agency, and when it happened, she didn't know, but I wasn't thinking about it, to be honest with you. And then when the call, I thought it was maybe that's where they had shifted the budget, and then I get on the call, and it was, well, we only want to target the Black people in the airport, and I hung up. I just said, this is not a call from me, so I got off, and now all of a sudden I get a call from them in a panic because somebody else found out that that's what they did. It doesn't make sense, and this is my point to Bonin, it's that we just have to don't check the box. I use that term inside. People are just checking the box. They hear word Black and they go, oh, DEI over there, and I'm like, it's the airport. You don't, and if it's a great piece of content and it's going across a bunch of different places, just look at the content. So I like, luckily for me, and I mean, I do it for other people. I really don't have to deal with that much. At the end of the day, I'm pretty forceful and aggressive, and I get past a lot of that. But I see it so much, and I see a lot of lies on the measurement side. The measurement side bothers me the most when you tell somebody one thing, and then after they leave the room, you say, now I need you to give me impressions. After you just told them, I'm not going to measure you that way. Right. That's the part that bothers me, and this is why we're doing partnerships where I can guarantee impressions, and we can do, if you want to play that game, we can do that as well. So the creative part for me is the data part that we're doing with the collective that we're launching together. The other part is being able to have partnerships with guys, people on the stage to be able to amplify their content on my network. So either game anybody wants to play, we can play. You know, that's the beauty of a collective for me, is that we can all play in. And you want to go that way, we can do it. You want to be creative, we can do it. We want great creators, we can do that. So just tell us what you need, and we can get it done. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You've invested in first-party data, you're doing other-party data, so you've checked that box.
Yeah.
And so to me, your conversation should be like sliding down a slippery slope right into the money pit.
But there's two pieces that you said that I think are no. Right. There's two pieces you said that I think are interesting, because you're right. TV, you know, the moment I started buying TV, the one thing I learned is they'll come in and they'll say, look, here's the deal. There's good news and bad news. The good news is, you know, the bad news is ratings are down. The good news is you're going to pay more. You know, and that premium audience, Prime, there you go. That's what it is. But the other thing that he said, I'm blown away too. I get it too. I walk in and they're like, oh, multicultural. I'm like, whoa. And I had a conversation with a good friend who we worked both at IPG for years, right? And we had dinner. We hadn't seen each other. And he started a company maybe a year and a half ago. And I said, how's it going? He's like, it's like I live in an alternative universe. He's like, people who I've known for decades are like, all of a sudden, I'm now treated this way. I was like, it is. But, you know, I think there's a piece, this is why I do think you're right. We can't stop having the conversation. Although I know it feels, you know, it's, people are trying to do the right thing because there's nervousness. There's all a bunch of tension, man, that's happening. And we just, as a media community, need to come to the table and say, this is something that really, I had somebody come up to me who I've known forever at Can, and they said, oh, you know, we've seen you've been reaching out, da-da-da. It wasn't me, it was my team using my email, but okay, fine. Reaching out, they said, we really want to meet with you guys, but we just want to make sure it's not charity. And I was like, I got to just walk away. Like, I mean, look at my track record. Like, really? Is that what you think? I mean, if it was charity, I would, first of all, you know, there'd be a band playing and I'd be yelling and you know, but so I do think it's something that we do need to continue to address, but I do think, you know, you're right. Why is it different when Turner owned it now? But it is.
I do think that at the end of the day, though, I think people do want to do the right thing. I think it's giving them a mechanism and a way in which they can do it, and a way that's easy to do it. I think a lot of people just don't want to get fired. You know,
and reminding people that it's an industry that has matured in the same exact way. Look, again, mobile went through all these things, went through it. It's an industry that has matured, that are delivering huge results, outsized results, and that's where the opportunity is. I'm gonna get kicked off. Any last questions? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you guys, like, and has it been beneficial to be a part of the collective?
Yes. Great talent, great people. Just in general, if I did no business, it would have been worth it. But I've found directors, producers, insanely creative things. The Can experience is one. You know, I've been there a million times. I've never seen nothing like that. It was amazing. So yeah, for me, it's been amazing. So I love getting insight from people. Listen, I like being around people and understanding and picking people's brains. So I learn from everybody.
Absolutely. I say joining GroupBlack significantly changed our trajectory just as an organization. They brought us to Cannes, got me here at CES. One thing I will say, and I told Bonin this, I told Rich and Travis, is for us being in gaming, we're very comfortable and we're very knowledgeable in that space. We started as a sports property with no intention of getting into media. Sports properties are also media properties. So one thing I always told Bonin is, like, we need a coach, we need mentorship and guidance so that we were navigating media correctly. It's very tricky out here, and honestly, it's been very fulfilling to have someone to lean on that we can call partners. People always see these guys at all the various events. You just get updates. So for us, it was the knowledge transfer, the access, and really just opportunity. And I'll say that's mainly the only thing that underrepresented companies really need. I think a lot of times people overestimate what we're asking for, and I was like, the simple relationships is like what's taking us this far, this soon.
Yes, for us, absolutely, 100%. The access, everything you said, but for us, plus the revenue, right? The one-stop shop, the ability to say, hey, look, we're looking for TV, we're looking for experiential, we're also looking for audio. How can we get it all in one place? And I think that's what the collective has been able to do. You've been saying for all these years you haven't been able to tap into Black-owned companies, but here we are, and they're all here. And we've seen the results, especially last year. So we're very excited. I mean, we're looking forward to this year.
I love it, especially last year. This year just started. It's been 5 days, Gary. Give us a chance, man.
Let's go, Bonin.
And Sarah, I know it's new, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Creator wouldn't exist without GroupBlack and this collective. You know, I think the whole kind of opportunity has been created by this very clear perspective that there are a lot of diverse creators that need support. And so, to that point, Ryan, like, value can come in lots of different ways, right? And like a lot of it comes into community, and we're here for it, and we're gonna grow this year.
Yeah, you can ask Gary a question. I mean, we got to shut it down there.
No, just 1 second. Gary, I was just sitting here thinking about this. I think about the top 10 shows on your platform. I watch them on Instagram, everywhere else. I mean, it's some of the most culturally driven shows that are on your platform. Yep. I see Jalen every day, so it's on my feed. Yep. I see Earn Your Leisure every day. I mean, I'm keep going down there. Like, I mean, you guys, you have to be on that side of it. How is that transition? How are you articulating that backwards to brands? Because that's a huge part of the viewership. That's why I'm seeing it.
Right. I mean, to his point, I mean, I'd love to charge $85 to $95 CPM just because those guys are the most culturally relevant shows currently in the marketplace, and they're competing against all of the top podcasts at the global level. I would love to charge $95 CPM. However, it's still the measurement piece, because we're still being gauged, we're still being measured with impressions, when in fact it should be the impact, the cultural impact that we're having. So it's a battle that we're fighting, and that's the plan for this year. I didn't answer that question. That's the goal this year, to do more of that education piece, to talk about, stop looking at us from an impression perspective. You can reach 10,000 people, but look at the 5,000 you reach and the overall impact that they have within their community.
All right, love it. And measurement is big on our agenda. I want to thank all of you guys for hanging out for an hour. Anyway, huge round of applause. Thank you so much, guys.